In this heart-pounding tale, I've awakened from a near, fatal pain to find myself ensnared in a whirlwind of secrets and lies. My parents are there by my side, weeping and desperate, but I can barely respond. Hovering on the brink of the hospital, I realize I'm not just an ordinary girl. My fate is intertwined with a mysterious shapeshifter. But when I need help the most, my savior turns out to be my least likely ally, my arch-enemy. Join me as we uncover the truth behind it all. Chapter 9. I groggily opened my eyes. The wall was facing me, so I turned around and looked at my alarm clock. It read 11:26. I slept for almost 12 hours. I yawned and started to stretch. When I found I couldn't do a total cut stretch, I remembered that I was still in my school outfit. I sighed and sat up. I felt dirty and had this need to take a shower. So I stood up, grabbed my pajamas and headed to the bathroom. I quietly tiptoed to the bathroom, shut the door, then turned on the light. It blinded me for a moment until my eyes adjusted. I undressed quickly and hopped in the shower. I turned the knob to the hottest it could go. The shower first spitted cold water, which made me jump. A few seconds later, a stream of nice, hot water cascaded on me. I sighed out in content as the hot water instantly soothed me. I grabbed my fruity shampoo and lathered it into my scalp. A minute later, I let the hot water wash the suds away. I grabbed my matching fruity conditioner and combed it through my hair. As I was combing the conditioner through my hair, the temperature of the water seemed to increase substantially. It started to burn my skin, so I turned the knob down closer to cold. The knob seemed to be broken. It is closer to cold, but the water is hotter than it was before I turned down the knob. Then the fire erupted in my stomach once again. I cried out in pain as I fell on my knees. My arm cuddled my stomach as my other hand tried to stop the water that was now striking me as I laid on the floor of the bathtub. My attempts were futile as my hand slipped off the knob. The fire took over my mind and body. Both my arms were now cradling my stomach. My body only registered the burning pain that came from my stomach, and I no longer noticed the water that was hitting me. I fell to my side, still clutching my stomach. The pain was roaring at new heights. This was beyond worse than anything before. I curled up into a ball on the bathtub floor. My tears were mixing with the water that was hitting my face. I didn't even try to control the sobs that left my lips. I just hoped my parents couldn't hear them. It erupted into an intense inferno. I put a fist in my mouth to try and muffle the scream that came out of my mouth. It seemed to work as only a small, high-pitched yelp came from my mouth, when I knew it was really a blood-crushed scream that was begging to be released. The fire continued to increase in temperature and intensity, and I soon found myself on the brink of unconsciousness. As soon as I was sure that I was going to fall into the nice, dark abyss of unconsciousness, the fire decreased. About 5 minutes later, the only proof that the pain had left was the now deep, dark bruises that again covered my stomach and thighs. I was shaking from the uncontrollable sobs that still fell from my mouth. I lay there on the floor for a few more minutes as my sobs subsided. Then I stood up and turned the knob so the water was off. I pulled the curtain to the side and was immediately hit with cold air. I shivered and quickly wrapped my towel around my body, being careful of the new bruises. When I looked in the mirror, a whole new round of tears started. This morning, when I had thought they were going away, the complete opposite happened. My stomach and thighs were again a dark purple and black. All evidence of healing had vanished, along with my hope that there was going to be no more pain. I looked at my face in the mirror. My eyes were pink and puffy, and my lips were still trembling from the sobs. My entire face was flushed red due to the hot water that was hitting me while I was on the bathtub floor. I wiped the towel on my face to rid any droplets of water and tears. I decided to leave my wet hair dripping down my back and instead wrapped the towel around my body. Turning around, I exited the bathroom. I quietly tiptoed across the hall to my room. Not wanting to put pajamas on, I instead put on a pair of boy shorts and a sports bra. I curled up into a ball on my bed. I didn't bother with the covers, knowing that I would wake up and kick them off and the burning feeling returned. I stared at the clock. Now it read 12:02. I watched the clock as it turned from 12:02 to 147. My mind was blank, but I couldn't make it turn off. My eyelids were heavy, but I couldn't make them close. I didn't know what to do, so I just laid there waiting for sleep. Eventually, my eyelids started to close. My brain turned off and I fell into a restless sleep. My eyes shot open and a gasp left my mouth after the first beep of the alarm clock. I snapped my hand out and pushed the off button. With my eyes wide open, I slowly sat up, clutching my stomach. My head snapped to my door when it opened slowly. Dad's head popped in. "Oh, sorry, sweetie." My dad apologized, looking sheepish. "I meant to shut off your alarm before you woke up. I want you to stay home and rest today." "Oh," rubbing my eyes with my palms. "Sorry, sweetie." He apologized again. "But your mom and I are leaving for work right now. I thought I could turn off your alarm right before we left." "It's okay, Dad. I guess I'll just go back to sleep again." I lay back down. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Milben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Have a nice day," Dad said while he closed my bedroom door. I heard him walk down the stairs. Then I faintly heard him talking to Mom. Then I heard the garage door open. Then a minute later close. I closed my eyes and again fell into a restless sleep. My eyes lazily opened. I turned my head from side to side and did my cat stretch. I sighed out in content as my body and muscles stretched out. I looked at my clock. The time read 11:02. Smiling, I sat up and yawned. A day with no school, no teachers, and especially no Ashton. I stand up and grab my pajamas and put them on before I go downstairs. I walk downstairs into the kitchen to grab some breakfast. Searching for the pantry, I found my favorite cereal, chocolate Lucky Charms. I opened up a cabinet and grabbed a bowl. Then I opened the silverware drawer and grabbed a spoon. I put the cereal, bowl, and spoon on the counter. I turned around and opened the fridge and grabbed the 2% milk. Hitting the fridge door shut with my hip, I turned around and placed the milk on the counter. I poured the Lucky Charms into the bowl. Then I opened the milk and poured it in until the cereal started rising from the amount of milk. With my cereal in hand, I didn't bother putting away the box but instead just put away the milk. I walked out of the kitchen and to the living room. I plopped down onto the couch and grabbed the remote off the coffee table. I turned on the TV and immediately started searching through the channels. The ice spread across my face when I found one of my favorite British shows was on, Doctor Who. I pressed the info button and was happy to see that it was one of my favorite episodes. The very first episode with Ms. Martha Jones. I happily sit back and watch as Martha Jones first sees that she's on the moon. I laugh with a mouthful of cereal as David Tennant pops on screen. I love David Tennant. I finish my cereal as Martha and the doctor are running away from the judo on. All the rhinoceros people. I get up and go into the kitchen to put my bowl in the sink. As I'm walking back to the couch, the doorbell rings. Who would be at the door? I ask myself as I walk to the door. I unlock the lock, turn the knob, and open the door. "Oh, hi Josh. What the hell are you doing here?" I ask Josh. He looks almost out of breath. He opens his mouth to respond. "And how the hell do you know where I live?" "Let me catch a breath, you revy." Josh panted while he bended over with his hands on his knees. I waited for him to catch his breath and tell me what the hell he was doing here. "Can I get a glass of water?" Josh finally asked, with his hands still on his knees. "Sure. Come in," I responded, turning around to the kitchen. I heard him walk in and shut the front door, opening the cabinet door. I grabbed a glass and heard Josh plop down on the couch. I filled the glass almost to the brim with water from the fridge. When I walked into the living room, I saw that Josh had already found that a remote and was searching through the channels. I gave him the glass of water and he chugged it down in around 5 seconds. "Thanks, Evie," he said while he wiped his mouth with his arm. "What are you watching?" "Doctor Who, obviously." I responded, a little offended that he didn't know what it was. "What's that?" Josh asked, still searching through the channels. I snatched the remote out of his hand, preventing him from changing the channel. "Well, maybe if you watched it you would understand." Josh raised his hands in surrender. Okay, fine. British guys in suits it is. Josh said, sitting back into the couch once again. I held up a finger. Hot British guys in suits, I said, putting emphasis on the word hot. Josh smirked, but before he could say something I interrupted him. Why are you here? Josh's face immediately turned serious. He opened his mouth to respond, but then closed it. He repeated that action a couple of times before finally taking a deep breath. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Are you hurt? In any way? Josh asked, looking extremely concerned. His green eyes bore into mine. I, however, didn't know how to respond to his questions. This time it was my turn to open and close my mouth. I looked down to my hands that were fidgeting in my lap. Josh's hands moved and covered mine. I looked back up into his eyes. Please, Evie, you can't trust me, Josh said earnestly. I haven't even known you for a week. I responded. Josh sighed at my answer. He looked almost sad, desperate. Josh closed his eyes and took a deep breath into his nose and out through his mouth. He then looked me straight in my eye. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Please, I need to know. Silence fell into the room as both Josh and I waited for my response. Josh, I just don't know. Then let's go out. Josh interrupted me. I stared at him. Like a date? I asked, astonished. No, Josh responded quickly. Not a date. Definitely not a date. More like a get to know you. Josh looked worried, like he said something he shouldn't have. So, get to know you date? That's not a date. Josh hesitated. Yes. I thought about it for a few seconds. If I got to know him, could I really trust him enough to tell him what's been going on? Could I really trust Josh to be my friend? With that last thought in my head, I responded. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Chapter 10. Josh had left over an hour ago. Our date was set for tomorrow night at 6. We were going to go to one of his favorite CAFS. Since then, I had started the project I was given. I had multiple websites open, and I had already texted my mom to pick up a white poster board for me. I wanted this project done quickly. I had already found an important event to write about, Fort Sumter, what supposedly caused the Civil War. I was in the middle of trying to find an important person from the Civil War. All of a sudden, my phone vibrated, signaling that I have a call. I pressed the answer button and then the speaker. Hello, I asked once I put my phone back down on the table. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Kristin's voice screamed through the speaker. Kristin. I mimicked her screaming. How's it going, girl? Back in her normal voice. I replied quickly. I just won the lottery. What happened? Her tone immediately changed to concerned. Kristin could always tell when something was wrong. Well, there's this guy. Is he cute? Kristin interrupted. He's a complete douchebag. He is one of the most annoying, selfish jackasses I've ever met. You would hate him. Does he have a name? Kristin asked after my mini rant. Ashton Carter. I heard a sound from the other side of the line. His name sounds cute. Ashton Carter. Kristin, just stop. He's not cute. He's a dickhead. You know, that is the third name, other than his real name, that you've given him in the past 2 minutes. Kristin almost sounded smug. Well, they're all true, I retorted. I heard another sound from Kristin. I decided to change the subject. What's going on with you? Well, let's see. Kristin starts. School still sucks, so nothing new there. Oh, there's a rumor going around that we're getting a new teacher. People say he's smoking hot. I laugh. What about other stuff that I actually care about? How hot? Like Chris Hemsworth hot, not including the Australian part. I heard he has blonde hair. Kristin sighed dreamily at the last part. You know he's a teacher, and that's against the law. Kristin burst in a fit of laughter. Not that way, miss. Dirty mind. It's not against the law to think someone's hot. I'd be on the death row. We both started laughing. Oh, how I miss her. So Chacha doing? Right now. I asked her after her laughter had mostly died down. Nothing. Talking to you and watching The Big Bang Theory on demand. What about you? Just doing a you. History project. It's terrible. I have so much to do. And my partner won't even help. My hand slapped over my mouth. I didn't mean to tell her that. What? Who's the asshole partner? I opened my mouth to respond but was quickly interrupted. Wait. It's that cute name jackass. Isn't it? That douche. Kristin shouted through the phone. Hoping she wouldn't have guessed it. I really didn't want to have this conversation with her. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. She asked back in her normal tone. Yes, I knew it. She was back to shouting. That little piece of shit. I sighed again. Please don't start Kristin. I already know he is every name in the book and I have a headache from all this work. Kristin paused for a moment. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. But only for you. Anyways, besides the douche, anything else going on? I bit my lip, debating to tell her about my date. I know she would say to go for it and start something. I just wasn't sure if I wanted that peer pressure to have Josh and I be something. Well, there's this other guy. I was interrupted again. Your dog. Is he cute? Kristin asked. I blushed. Glad that Kristin couldn't see me. Yeah, I guess. I heard her squeal on the line. Cute. Did he ask you on a date? I fidgeted with the hem of my shirt, not knowing how to answer. He did. Didn't he? How cute. What's his name? Kristin squealed. His name is Josh. I felt surprisingly proud saying that. And it's not a date. I added quickly before Kristin could get any ideas. Well then, what is it? I could hear the stubbornness in her voice. It's a get to know you date. That's not a date. I used the same words that I used with Josh. Kristin paused. What the hell is that? I laugh. It's a date that's not a date. Well, thanks for clearing that off. Sarcasm was clear in her voice. Well, I don't know how else to put it. That's what it is. Plain and simple. Plain and simple, my ass. Kristin retorted. I laugh. And soon Kristin joined in. Accidentally. I look at the work that I still have to do and my laugh dies down immediately. Hey Kristin, do you remember that project I mentioned? I ask, rhetorically. The one with the douche. The very one. I respond. Yes, I have to get back to it. I'm sorry, Kristin. Regret lacing my tone. She sighs. All right, Evie. Go be the goody-two-shoes I know you are. I scoff. Goody-two-shoes, my ass. I repeat what she said earlier. She laughs. But it sounds forced. By Evie. Love you, sister. I love you to Kristin. I take the phone away from my ear. Call me again soon or I'll hunt you down. I hear from the speaker. I laugh and press the end button. I put my phone down and turn toward my project. Looking at the workload. It's ridiculous that I have to do all of it by myself. Screw it. I say to myself. I pack up all of my school stuff and put it in my bag. I've done enough today. I convince myself. I can work on it later or tomorrow. It's not even due for 2 weeks. My happiness is short as I realize that I hung up with Kristin for no reason. I pick up my phone and turn on the TV. Wanting to relax. Doctor Who shows up. I quickly see what episode is on. Another David Tennant one. I decide to call Kristin later. My show was on. My brain briefly flashes to the date, tomorrow with Josh. My stomach plummets in nervousness. Though I don't know why. David Tennant makes a funny joke in a British accent and I laugh. I pushed the date thoughts out of my mind. I could worry about it tomorrow. Chapter 11. I looked through my closet for what seemed like the 100th time. Nothing jumped out at me. I didn't know what exactly to wear. It wasn't a date. But we were going out to a restaurant. Should I even be nervous? What if he thinks this is more than what I think of it? What if he likes me? I don't really want a boyfriend. My head starts hurting from all the different thoughts. I take a couple of steps back and look again. I concentrate only on colors. My eyes immediately go to my blue summer dress. It's not summer and I don't want to wear a dress. I go over to it, take it out of my closet and put it on my bed. I look again. I see my forest green Hollister, V-neck, elbow-length sweater. I go over to it and pull it out. I walk to my mirror and hold it up to my body. It looked nice, and would look better with some dark wash skinny jeans. It seemed appropriate for our date. That's not a date, not too fancy, yet not too casual either. I put that sweater on the bed and put my blue dress back into my closet. I take out a pair of my dark wash skinny jeans. I put the jeans on my bed next to the sweater. Next, I walk over to my bathroom and take out my curler. It heats up and I put a light curl into my hair. I walk back over to my bedroom and notice the time, 5:42. Shit. I only have 15 minutes until Josh comes and picks me up. I quickly walk over to my bed and put on my outfit. Looking into the mirror, I straighten my shirt so it's over the waistband of my pants. With my shirt straightened out, I walked over to my makeup which was on top of my dresser, in front of my smaller mirror. I took out my black eyeliner and put a small line on my top and bottom lash line. Then, I took out my mascara and put a swipe on each lash line. I then took out my foundation and brushed it on to make sure that there were no dark circles under my eyes. With my makeup looking the way I wanted, I again looked at the clock, 5:51. I quickly walked over to my closet and grabbed my moccasins. With my shoes in hand, I walked down the stairs into the front door. I slipped on the shoes and grabbed my purse that I placed by the front door so I would remember to bring it. I sat on the stairs, looking through my purse, making sure I had everything I needed. Money, chapstick, tampons, and lip gloss. The doorbell rang and I jumped. I looked at my phone, 5:57. I hop up and walk to the door and open it. Josh looked good, to say the least. He was wearing dark jeans and tight, long-sleeved dark green shirt. We were sort of match Y. Not that I minded. Hey, you look good. Josh complimented me, though he seemed very nervous to say something like that. Look who's talking. I responded with a smile. Josh's nervous expression vanished as soon as he saw my smile. Shall we go? Gesturing for me to out. We shall. I stepped out the front door, turned around, locked it, and then followed Josh to his car. He opened the door as I approached and gestured for me to get in the car. I smiled and slid in. Once I was all the way in, he shut the door and walked around the front of the car to the driver's side. He got in and started the car. So where's this cafe? I asked him as he started driving. Just in town a bit. He vaguely responded. I raised my eyebrow, but didn't say anything in return. Silence fell over us. However, it wasn't an awkward silence. It was more like a thoughtful silence. I think Josh was letting me think over our past conversation. I stomach churned at the possibility of telling someone else about the pains in my stomach. How would he respond? My thoughts were interrupted when the car stopped. I looked out the window and saw a small, blue, house-like building that said, Nikki's Cafe, painted a bright yellow on a wooden board that was attached to the front of the building. It didn't look crowded, as I couldn't see many people through the dimly lit windows. Here we are, Josh said as he opened his door. I followed suit until I heard an annoyed grunt come from Josh. With one foot out of the car, I looked back at Josh. What? I questioned. It's customary for the guy to open the door. Josh responded. I gave him a sheepish smile. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel. Cuts out thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Do you want me to close it so you can open it again? Josh smiled. No, it's okay. The next time I want to open the door. He exited the car. Next time. There was going to be a next time. I exited the car, walked to the front of the car, and took Josh's outstretched hand. We walked towards the cafe together, and like a gentleman, Josh opened the door for me. Immediately when I walked in, I was hit with the aroma of old-fashioned cooking. The smell of burgers, French fries and milkshakes wafted around the establishment. A vibration of voices surrounded me as I took a couple more steps in. The place was almost filled with people of all ages. The inside of the cafe looked like a home transformed into a restaurant. The dark wooden floor ended on each side as tan walls rose up. A staircase in the back behind the counter led to the upstairs. Next to the staircase, still behind the counter, was a window that showed the kitchen. The counter held pastries such as cookies, brownies, and fresh-made bread. A waitress behind the counter was giving change to an elderly couple from an old-fashioned cash register. Tables filled the space. They were spaced out evenly throughout the rest of the restaurant. In front of me, a little podium stood with a small calcboard attached to it. The calcboard said, "Please wait to be seated." "Do you like it?" Josh asked me as he stood next to me. I tried to find the right word. "Homie." Josh smiled. "I know. But wait until you tried their food." A waitress came up to the podium. She looked around 25 with shoulder-length blonde hair. "Jahaya, table for two?" she asked in a cheery voice. "Yes, please," Josh responded. "Right this way." We followed her. She walked to an empty two-person table by the right side of the restaurant. Josh and I sat down and the waitress placed the menus in front of us. The waitress then left us saying that she would be right back to take our orders. Another silence settled over Josh and I as we both looked over the menus. "Is it okay if I order for both of us?" Josh asked me, looking directly in my eye. "Sure," I responded. The waitress returned and asked us what we would like. Josh responded for both of us. "We'll have 2 chocolate milkshakes, and cheeseburgers and fries." She wrote down the order and left. Josh turned to me again and sighed. "So where were we in our conversation yesterday?" I bit my bottom lip, my nerves returning. "I thought you wanted us to get to know each other better." "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "What's your favorite color?" I smiled at Josh's question. Weird original way to start a conversation, I said sarcastically. Josh smiled in return. "And I don't know. It depends on the day and how I'm feeling." I responded. "Okay, then what's your favorite color today?" Josh asked. I thought for a second. "Blue. TARDIS blue." Josh looked confused. "What kind of blue is TARDIS blue?" Of course he wouldn't get it. "The color of the TARDIS. From Doctor Who. I watched it yesterday and I guess I feel like that blue is my favorite color right now." "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." Josh responded, looking a little confused. "What about you? What's your favorite color?" I asked him. "Forest green." He responded immediately. "The color of your eyes?" Josh looked confused at my statement. I blushed and tried to explain myself. "The color of your eyes are forest green." Oh, I could see a very light pink color his cheeks. "What's your favorite food?" I quickly asked him. "Meat," Josh answered simply. "What kind of meat?" I questioned him further. "Really any kind." "Steak." "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "Bacon. I love bacon." I laughed at Josh's facial expression when he said bacon. "What's your favorite food?" The waitress returned with our chocolate milkshakes and said the burgers would be out in a few minutes. The aroma of the milkshake was so entrancing that I had to try it. I put my lips to the straw and moaned at the taste. This was the best milkshake I had ever tasted. My favorite food. This milkshake. I responded after I had drunken almost half of my milkshake. "What did I tell you?" Josh responded with a smile. I responded with my own smile. What's your favorite movie? Josh asked after he took a sip of his milkshake. I thought for a minute. You're going to have to be more specific than that. What do you mean? It's a pretty simple question. Josh smiled. If it's so easy, then you answer it. I responded childishly. Josh paused for a few seconds. I would have to say my all-time favorite movie is... I don't know. You're right. It is hard. I stuck out my tongue. Told you. All right then. Next question, since neither last can answer the last one. I never said I could answer the question. I just said you needed to be more specific. I interrupted. What do you mean by specific? Josh asked. Like favorite movie of a year? Or favorite movie in a specific genre? I explained simply. Oh, obviously. I smirked at Josh's slowness. To my agent extraordinaire, webnovel. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. What's your favorite romance movie? I crinkled my nose in disgust. Wow, Josh. Way to be cliché. To my agent extraordinaire, webnovel. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I'm curious. Josh held his hands up in surrender. Fair enough. I don't like romance movies. I simply stated. Josh's eyebrows shot up in surprise. What? I questioned. Well, I thought you would like romance movies. He responded a little sheepish. I narrowed my eyes at him. Okay, so what's your favorite romance movie? I taunted him. Josh scoffed. Please. You think this. He gestured to himself. Watches romance movies yet? I actually think that The Notebook is your favorite movie ever. You seem like that kind of guy. I egged him on. Josh smirked, and a mischievous glint entered his eyes. He raised his pointer finger and waved it side to side like you would to a child. His other hand shot out and grabbed my milkshake and held it deliberately away from me. Hey. My hand reached out to try and grab it back. Josh held my milkshake behind him so I couldn't reach it. After a few seconds of trying to reach across, I sit back in my chair and cross my arms in front of my chest. Josh's eyes light up in mischievous victory. Give me back my milkshake. I demand. Josh laughs. Take it back. He mimics my demand. Take what back? Still irritated that he has my milkshake. The Notebook. He spits out the movie title. Is my favorite movie. Why should I? It's probably true. I continued to taunt him. Josh's eyes narrowed. Then, as if a light bulb went off in his head, a sinister smile came across his face and his eyes turned playful. This looks like a good milkshake. Don't you agree, Evie? Josh brought the milkshake closer to his mouth. Don't you dare. I hissed at him. Dare do what? He taunted me. The straw was less than 2 inches from his mouth and closing. He wasn't going to stop. I take it back. Your favorite movie isn't The Notebook. Now give me my milkshake. I gave in. Josh's smirk came on full force as he handed my milkshake back to me. Victory radiated off of him. Once it was in my reach, I snatched the milkshake out of his hand and placed it closest to me on the table. You mean? I stuck out my tongue at him. Don't disguise man lines. Josh shrugged his shoulders. Right after Josh said that, the waitress returned with our food. To my agent extraordinaire, webnovel. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm, she said as she placed the food in front of us. The smell of perfectly grilled cheeseburgers hit my nose and my mouth started watering. I completely forgot about my table manners as I dug in. As soon as I took a bite, I knew this was one of the best burgers I'd ever eaten. It was grilled to perfection. I quickly started eating, wanting to eat as much of this burger as I could. Soon, it was halfway gone. It was right about now that I realized how big these burgers are, and how Josh watched me scarf down half of the burger. You know it's rude to stare. I blushed, grimacing at how unattractive I must have looked eating that. I have never seen her go eat that quickly, Josh said astounded. So is that a compliment? Wondering what Josh was going to say before girl. Yes, definitely a compliment. I blushed at his statement. We settled into a comfortable silence as we started eating. Josh looked like he was deep in thought about something. I brushed it off as I kept eating. A few seconds later, Josh cleared his throat. You know, you're much more outgoing when you're not in school. He was walking on dangerous territory, and he knew it. I didn't respond. My mind was swarming with how I should respond. Josh looked at me, waiting. I cleared my throat so the now awkward silence would leave. Is that a bad thing? I asked him, trying to sound offended. No, just an observation. He responded, not affected by my fake hostility. I didn't respond. So Josh continued. You know, I observed another interesting thing about you two. My heartbeat increased as Josh continued to talk. I think it was on the second or third day I knew you. We were in science and our papers fell on the floor. You reached down to grab them and your shirt rolled up. Josh stopped talking. He knew that I knew exactly what he was talking about. My heartbeat clouded my hearing. My palms were sweaty, and I was trying to keep my eyes from tearing up. I didn't want Josh to see how much this was affecting me. I couldn't look at him, so I stared down at my almost fully eaten cheeseburger. Something that looked and tasted so good, now almost made me sick. Evie, I want to leave, please. I interrupted him. Josh looked like he wanted to say something in return, but the waitress beat him to it. How was everything? Everything was delicious. Could we please get the check? He asked politely. The waitress nodded and walked off to get the check. We didn't talk while she was gone. I fidgeted with my hands while Josh dug something out of his pocket. I lifted my head when I noticed Josh throw something on the table. Money. The waitress didn't return yet, but Josh still stood up and reached his hand out to me with an apologizing look. Sadness radiated from him. In my sullen mood, I ignored his hand as I stood up and started walking toward the door. Josh fell in step beside me. I reached the door and opened it. Without waiting for Josh, I stepped outside and quickly walked to Josh's car. He opened it and I slid in his car. Josh got in and started driving. A tense silence enveloped us. I stared out the window at the forest. We were going too fast for me to see the individual trees. But eventually, the trees were becoming easier to see. We were slowing down. Soon, we came to a stop. Josh turned to me. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Please, tell me, where are we? I asked Josh, ignoring his plea. We are about 5 minutes away from your house. He responded immediately. So why aren't we, Evie? I saw them. You know I did. I saw the bruises. Josh's unasked question hung there. How did you get them? I just want to go home and get some sleep, Josh. Desperation in my voice. I just want to help. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Josh pleaded. I thought about it. Start driving, and I'll start talking. Josh started the car and again started driving to my house. Okay. I took a huge breath. Truth is, those are bruises, so you got that right. However, I don't know how they form. They just appear. My eyes started tearing up as I really don't know. Almost every night, the tears spilled over. There's this pain. It's like a burning inferno that roars through my abdomen. I don't know what it is or where it's coming from, or even why it's happening to me. Josh pulled up to my driveway. He stopped the car, and his arms came around me in a much-needed hug. I hugged him in return, almost as if my life depended on it. I was still crying and Josh kept on hugging me. He started to whisper sweet nothings as I started to calm down. A couple minutes later, I wasn't crying anymore. I pulled back from Josh, and found him looking at me admirably. Thank you for trusting me, Evie, Josh said. I nodded in return. It felt really good letting someone in. Josh gave me another hug and kissed my forehead. Good night, Evie. Josh whispered against my forehead. Good night, Josh. I responded. I got out of the car and walked to the front door. Once I was there, I waved back at Josh. I saw him wave back. I turned back around, unlocked the door, and stepped in. I closed the door and immediately ran up to my room. About 10 minutes later, I had washed all the makeup off my face and had gotten into pajamas. I laid in bed thinking about Josh and our date. My eyelids started to feel heavy. The last feeling before I fell into unconsciousness was of a huge weight being lifted off my shoulders. Chapter 12 Sunday passed too quickly and soon enough. Monday came around. I woke up, surprisingly, with no pain. I hadn't felt it since that fateful day in the shower. I got out of bed and did my morning routine of finding my outfit, putting it on, brushing my hair and teeth, then putting on a small amount of foundation so the circles under my eyes would disappear. My sleeping habits were becoming much better due to the lack of excruciating pain. I walked downstairs and found my mom ready to go. I quickly grabbed an apple, as I couldn't find my normal Nutri-Grain bar. I started munching on it as I walked to the garage. Once there, I slid in the front seat with my backpack and my mom started driving. I never asked you, how was your date? My mom asked me, not really wanting to tell her the details which she would want. Well, we went to this really good cafe, which had probably the best milkshake I had ever eaten. We just talked, I guess. I explained really quickly, hoping that it was enough for my mom. What did you guys talk about? Of course not. We talked about our favorite things, like colors and movies. And my mom said impatiently, and what? That's all. We just talked. I said, annoyed. I just want to know what happened. Nothing bad, right? She glanced at me from the corner of her eye. It took me a second to figure out what she meant by bad. No, Mom. Nothing like that happened. We just met. A light pink blush covered my cheeks once. I realized where my mother's thoughts had went. Why would she even go there? As a mom, I need to make sure you're making the right decisions, she reprimanded, not sounding at all embarrassed from what she asked me. No, Mom. We didn't do anything but talk. Can we drop it, please? I asked with the blush still covering my cheeks. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. If that's all that happened, my mom said skeptically. Yes, Mother. I huffed. We drove the rest of the way in silence. Once we pulled up to the school, I quickly got out of the car and waved goodbye, making sure my mom didn't have any time to look for Josh. She drove away as I turned around and walked towards the school. I couldn't spot Josh standing around the outside of the school, so I hoped to see him inside. I walked inside and still couldn't find him. I decided to stop looking and just head to class. I would see him in math. I started walking towards my first class. My mind wandered as I walked to my class. What did Josh think of our date? What did he think about what I told him? My thoughts turned sour once my mind started thinking of Josh's new opinion of me. What does he think of me now? My thoughts abruptly stopped when I accidentally walked into the doorframe of my class. My neck and face heated up in embarrassment. I looked around quickly and noticed that no one was paying attention. I sighed in relief. I walked into class and found my way to my seat. I was, once again, the first person in the room besides Mr. Holland. I took out my notebook for this class, which also had my checklist for our project. I had almost completed the poster on Sunday. I only needed a few more pictures and the last few touches on the timeline and summary, and then I would be done. However, I didn't even get to start my paper, but I did have 2 weeks left. After looking at the checklist for a minute, I put it away. I didn't want to think about it. I leaned my head on my hand and decided to stare at the clock as the minutes ticked by. The minutes started to tick by. The minutes started to tick by faster the more I watched the clock. I started to enjoy watching the clock ticking. It became my entertainment. Too soon, the class started filing in. I watched as people, who I still didn't know, came in talking and laughing with their friends. Suddenly missing Kristen. My eyes stayed on a certain boy when he walked in. He walked in laughing with one of his friends, who I also didn't know. They seemed to be deep in a very funny conversation. His laugh drifted to my ears and a low gasp came out of my mouth. It was so deep and friendly. Suddenly, Ashton's eyes found mine. I sucked in a quick breath and quickly averted my eyes. Shit. I didn't want him to see me watching him laugh. I feel so stalker-ish. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Ashton walk over to our table. I held my breath as he sat down. When he didn't say anything, I quietly let go of my held and breathe. On Mr. Holland, who decided to start class. We were halfway through class, and halfway through Mr. Holland's lecture, when I felt hot breath against my ear. The only movement was of my suddenly racing heart. To my agent extraordinaire, webnovel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I didn't know why it was racing. What were you looking at earlier? His hot breath and my ear. My breathing hitched in my throat. I didn't know how to respond. He sounded impatient. I took a deep breath. Nothing. I hoped my voice didn't shake when I answered. It didn't sound like I did to me. You sound nervous. Ashton stated. Are you nervous? Why would I be nervous? I answered bravely. Ashton merely shrugged and leaned back toward his seat. I took a deep breath, glad that he moved away. I was becoming uncomfortable with him that close. My relief was short-lived. About 2 minutes later, his hot breath was once again at my ear. So, he drawled out in a hushed tone, "How's our project going?" Our project? Well, what else would it be? Ashton's cocky reply suddenly made me angry. How about the assholes and I's project? My mind was so incoherent with anger at his little snarky remark that was the only reply I could come up with. However, it seemed to do the trick. What did you call me? Ashton's harsh whisper blew against my ear. You heard me, dickhead. I didn't get why he ticked me off so much. A growl-like noise vibrated in my ear. My anger vanished at the noise. It sounded so hostile and animal. Watch what you say, Evie. His threat whispered in my ear. Despite the threat, shivers ran down my spine when he spoke. I quickly shoved my feelings aside and again tried to focus on the lecture. After a minute, Ashton's presence against my side vanished. I assumed he moved to lean back in his chair. I let out a breath and focused on Mr. Holland and his lecture. Class ended and I quickly packed up my stuff and took off towards my next class. I was excited to see Josh today and talk to him. After I let everything off my chest and told him everything, I think our friendship could become deeper. I wanted to discuss my predicament with him because he seemed to know more about it than he was letting on. I quickly reached math class and looked eagerly towards Josh's desk. It was empty. My smile turned into a frown. I was really looking forward to talking to him. My shoulders sagged a little as I walked toward my seat. Once I sat down, I took out my math book and waited for Mrs. Flemington to start class. My once cheery mood disappeared after math. Without Josh, math was once again the most boring class on earth. I didn't feel like doing anything, and I definitely didn't want to continue school today. I walked out of math class and headed to communications. My mood lifted as I walked to class, excited to see Catherine. Hopefully she was here today. I reached communications and looked into the classroom. To my agent extraordinaire, webnovel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Catherine shouted from the middle of the room. Everyone's head turned to me and my face turned red once everybody in the class was looking at me. I waved to Catherine and walked into the room. Luckily for me, everyone who was looking at me focused again on what they were doing before Catherine shouted. I started walking over to Catherine, but Mr. Johnston stepped in front of me. Are you feeling better, Evie? Concern lacing his voice. Yes, much better. I responded. Mr. Johnston smiled at my response and turned to another student who was asking for his help. I stepped around Mr. Johnston and walked to my seat next to Catherine's. I sat down and put my backpack next to my seat. Catherine turned toward me. How you feeling? Much better. I think I was sleep deprived. I joked. Aren't we all? Catherine muttered. I chat quietly and was about to respond when Mr. Johnston started class. All right, class. Today we are going to start watching the movie. There was a muffled yes around the room. However, he continued, there will be no talking, no cell phones, and no sleeping. Oh, and before we start, I know he looks like a young Efron. What's that supposed to mean? I look at Catherine and raise my eyebrow in question. She shrugs her shoulders in response. Mr. Johnston smiled like he knew something no one else did. He walked over to the DVD player and put in the Romeo and Juliet DVD. I sighed and slumped down into my seat. Mr. Johnston started the movie. As soon as it started, I understood what Mr. Johnston said about Efron. Except this guy was much hotter. He does look like Efron. Catherine exclaimed. I chuckled again at her obvious statement. Mr. Johnston rolled his eyes at Catherine. For the rest of class, we watched the beginning of Romeo and Juliet. I had already seen this movie a couple of times with my romance-obsessed mother. Class was 5 minutes away from ending when Mr. Johnston paused the movie. We were at the part where Romeo just left Juliet's balcony. Tomorrow we will either finish the movie or get close to finishing it, Mr. Johnston said. Everyone started packing up their stuff. I didn't have any stuff to pack up, so I stayed seated in my seat. He's so hot. Catherine gushed to me. The guy who played Romeo. I asked her. She gave me a look. No, the chick who played Juliet. I left. Catherine and I walked out of the class and started heading toward the lunchroom. However, about halfway to the lunchroom, I didn't know if I wanted to go into the lunchroom. What's wrong? Catherine asked, looking worried. Well, I didn't know how to explain my irrational fear of going into the lunchroom. Luckily, Catherine seemed to understand. Come on, Evie. You can sit with me. You'll be fine. Catherine grabbed my arm and started dragging me to the lunchroom. Catherine dragged me straight into the lunchroom, not seeming bothered by some stares that greeted us. She walked directly to a table in the back, near a window. She then promptly sat me down in a seat and proceeded to seat herself next to me. There were already a couple people at the table. At once I sat down. All eyes were on me. I quickly looked down at the table, hiding my embarrassment. Hello, friends. This is Evie. Catherine introduced. I looked up to see their responses. I'm Grant. I'm in your honors communications class. Grant introduced. As soon as he mentioned honors communications, I instantly recognized him from my first day here. He was in the group with Catherine, myself, and those other two who didn't seem to like me. I quickly returned a smile. Hey, Evie. I'm Taylor. A girl with extremely curly, brown hair introduced. I smiled in return. She seemed pretty nice. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Now that introductions are over, time to get down to business. How hot is the guy from Romeo and Juliet? Catherine gushed. Well, Taylor started before she was interrupted by Catherine. It was rhetorical. He's hot as hell, Catherine said, with a serious face. I cracked a smile at her seriousness. Lunch continued, and I found myself enjoying the small talk that was going on. I didn't take part in it much. My shyness was too much. Lunch eventually ended and all four of us stood up to go to our next classes. See you in gym, Catherine said as she started walking away from me. I waved in return as I started heading to science. As I was walking, someone settled into the same walking pace as me as they walked beside me. I glanced at who was there, my senses on high. Josh. I quickly turned and gave him a hug. He seemed surprised by my outburst, but gave me a hug in return. Where were you? You weren't in math, I accused as we started walking again. Sorry. He apologized. I got caught up doing something at home. It was kind of important, so I skipped the beginning of school low. I didn't know how to respond, so my mind turned blank. Silence settled over us. How was your morning? Josh asked as we neared our class. It was school on a Monday morning. What do you think? I answered, sarcasm lacing my voice. Josh chucked and didn't respond. We reached our class and walking in. Surprisingly, today was one of the rare days where we would have to take notes. I sighed in disappointment. I wanted to talk to Josh. After an hour of drawing butterflies, listening to a monotone teacher, and making weird faces at Josh, class was finally over. I quickly packed up my stuff, excited to finally being able to talk to Josh. I met him outside of the classroom door. We started walking toward gym. About what you told me, Josh started. I took a deep breath, my stomach fluttering from the nervousness that suddenly appeared. Questions from this morning started swirling around in my mind. What would he think of me now? Did you tell anyone else? I looked at him, confused. Why would he ask me that? No, just you, I said slowly. Josh sighed in relief. A puzzled expression spread across my face at his relief. Why would it matter if I told someone else? Why does it matter? I asked him. What do you mean? He stopped in the somewhat empty hallway. Well, why would it matter if I told anyone else? I elaborated. Josh hesitated. It would just be better to keep this between you and me. I was offended. Why should he decide if I should tell anyone else? What if it gets worse? There was a slight lacing of anger in my tone. If it gets worse, you tell me. Josh's voice hardened and his green eyes darkened. And what would you do about it? Anger coursed through me. I don't know why this was getting on my nerves so much. I just know that it is. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilbe, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Josh's eyes immediately softened at my outburst. He sighed and ran his hand through his hair. I'm sorry for causing you to get mad. Truthfully, I don't know what I would do. Josh apologized, sincerity lacing his voice. He seemed to want to tell me something else, but something behind me stopped him. I turned around to see what he was looking at. Ashton and his friends were walking into the gym. With one exception, Ashton had stopped and was staring right at us. He looked angry at the pair of us talking. Ashton stared directly at Josh, ignoring me, and then turned and walked into the gym. What's his deal? No idea. After Ashton had walked into the gym, Josh said goodbye and headed to his class. I walked into the gym and to the girls' locker room. Catherine was already there, still gushing about Romeo. You know, he's like probably 30 or something now. That movie came out in the 1980s. He's old now, I said as I got to my locker. Thanks for crushing my dreams. Catherine snorted. Just telling the truth. Catherine stuck out her tongue at me. I chuckled and gotten changed to get into my gym clothes. About 5 minutes later, Catherine and I had left the locker room and our 15-minute run had commenced. We didn't talk during it, for fear of being yelled at by Mr. Guy, who said he was enforcing our exercise by making us not talk. Catherine flipped him off as many chances as she got behind his back. I could tell she hated running almost as much as she hated not being allowed to talk. Our run ended in Mr. Guy decided it was a good idea to play kickball. He split us up into teams, and luckily Catherine and I were together. The class played until it was time to get changed back into school clothes. Our team had lost substantially, by 11 points. However, it seemed unfair because the other team had Ashton and all his friends, though I have no idea how all of them got on the same team. At the final bell, I said goodbye to Catherine, but not before she took my phone and proceeded to put her number into it. I walked out of the school, not seeing Josh anywhere. I couldn't continue my search as I saw my mum pull up. I didn't want to risk that embarrassment. I slid into the car and she took off towards the house. How was school? She asked a little too cheerfully. I answered in a monotone voice. Did you see your date? Her cheerfulness rising. You mean Josh? Knowing that this was going to be the only discussion topic, yes. Of course I saw him. This is school, I answered, irritation clear in my voice. What did he say? Apparently not clear enough. It was school, not another date. I almost shouted. She had no idea how much she was irritating me. "You don't have to tell me," she said smugly. I sighed and leaned my head against the window, looking at the passing green forests. Chapter 13. My eyes lazily opened as I started to squirm around in my bed, trying to find a comfortable position. I looked over at my alarm clock, only to see that I had a good 4 hours of sleep left. I sighed as I closed my eyes again, hoping for sleep to return to me, laying there for what seemed like an hour, but was probably only a minute. I found I couldn't fall back asleep. I turned around to face the wall and away from the light from my alarm clock. An uncomfortable feeling started in my stomach. I decided to ignore it as I tried to get in a comfortable position to sleep. I tried to lay on my stomach, but found that the uncomfortable feeling grew. I turned around so I was laying on my back, and the feeling grew in my stomach again. I tried laying on each of my sides, but nothing worked. I turned so once again I was on my back, with my eyes closed, still wishing for sleep, and that's when it hit me. The fire exploded in my stomach. I cried out, but silenced it immediately as to not wake my parents. My arms immediately cradled my stomach as I turned on my side to get into the fetal position. Waves and waves of fire crashed through my body. Tears started forming in my eyes at the intensity. Soon enough, they were falling down my face as the fire wrecked through my body. I bunched up part of the sheet and bit on it to muffle the seemingly uncontrollable whimpers coming out of my mouth. My breath started coming in pouts as the fire roared louder and hotter. I cradled my stomach closer, willing it to stop. I struggled to keep quiet. The fire kept on coming. Suddenly, it started dying down. I moved the bunched up sheet from my mouth. My breath was coming back to normal and I had a hysterical case of the hiccups. The wetness on my cheeks dried, leaving a light salty residue. The soft half-sigh left my lips. My arms fell slack around my stomach. The tense fetal position I was in fell slack along with my arms. I moved my head to see what time it was, and that's when it hit again. It hit with a bone-crushing force. Never had it hit with this much intensity. It seemed to consume me in agonizing pain. There was no time for tears. No time for whimpers. No time for anything other than fire. My eyes were completely dry. The fire was too painful for tears. No sound came out of my mouth. It seemed to have stolen my voice. I couldn't move, not even to get back into the tense fetal position. So I stayed in that slack fetal position, unable to change it. I stayed frozen as the fire again racked through my body. This time, however, it seemed to have a purpose, and its purpose was to make me break, and it was succeeding. Black spots started filling my vision. I found that it was becoming increasingly difficult to breathe. My eyelids were starting to become heavy. The sleep that I was looking for seemed to hit me full force. I sighed as my eyelids slipped shut, while the fire still consumed me. Blue, redly red. Those were the only two colors I could see against the blue sky. A wailing noise surrounded me as I felt my body being moved. My mom was crying, trying to say something to me, but I couldn't make it out. On my other side, a guy looking down at me, also trying to say something. I had a feeling that what he was saying was important, but I couldn't pay attention. The sleep that I wanted so much returned. I welcomed it wholeheartedly. My eyelids slid shut once again. Chapter 14. Josh's POV. The sound of sirens reached my ear. With my advanced sight, I saw blue and red lights in the distance. They were headed towards Eddie's house. I took off immediately, my claws digging into the forest floor with every frantic step. Why did I have to be so far away? I dodged past trees at an incredible speed. I ran through bushes, scattering their leaves. Any animal that happened to be near me had probably taken off. I couldn't care about how much noise or attention I was making as I ran to Evie's house. The ambulance and police cars had beaten me. I stayed hidden in the tree line, hoping no one would notice a large, brown shape in the woods. I watched as a hysterically crying woman opened the door. The medics rushed in her house. I couldn't see what was going on, so I tried to listen through all the exterior noise. I heard feet running up the stairs. A door opened, and at least 4 people rushed into Evie's room. 2 more people hopped out of the awaiting ambulance with a stretcher. That's when the worst possibility made itself known. She couldn't be. My eyes started to tear up at the possibility. Evie couldn't be dead. The guys quickly rolled the stretcher into Evie's house. I heard a body being placed onto the stretcher. A mournful howl started in my throat. It was cut off when Evie was rolled out on the stretcher. I could see that she was still breathing. My howl died down and turned into a whimper as I looked at the state of her. She easily looked like she could be dead. Her skin was too pale. There was sweat all along her face and body. The only assurance I had that she was alive were the shallow movements of her chest going up and down as she breathed. The medics rolled her into the ambulance, along with her crying parents. The ambulance immediately took off, with a police car in front of it and behind it. I took off, following the line of emergency vehicles. I made sure that I was in the cover of the trees as I followed. Soon, we left the residential area of town and the forest disappeared from next to the road and reappeared behind the stores. Still in the forest, I followed the ambulance by the sirens. I had to make sure she got to the hospital quickly. I reached the hospital a few seconds before the ambulance did. I watched from the tree line as the ambulance drove into the intersection. Medics immediately rushed from inside the hospital to the back of the ambulance. I watched as they lifted the stretcher out of the ambulance and rushed it into the hospital. Evie's parents came out of the ambulance next and rushed into the hospital after their daughter. I tried listening to what was happening in the hospital. With all the noise, the sirens, the voices and commotion in the hospital, I couldn't hear what was going on with Evie. My worry immediately turned into searing anger as I realized who put her there, who put her in that condition. A fearsome growl tore out of my throat. I turned around, and in an anger-driven frenzy, I ran back home. Red clouded my vision as I ran. That son of a bitch. I reached home with a new record and a new plan. It was probably going to get me killed, but I was past caring at this point. The shift back to Hume and didn't hurt as it should have. I figured it was because I was so angry. Grabbing a pair of shorts in the basket that is left out on the porch, I stormed in. The door smacked the wall and everyone's head turned to look at me. I ignored them as I stormed upstairs. Reaching Ashton's room, I didn't bother knocking. My anger increased as I found him lounging in his bed watching TV without a care in the world. You son of a bitch. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Milburn, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Not caring who heard me, Ashton's eyes snapped to me. He clearly didn't like what I said. I will give you a chance to apologize before I show you who's in charge here, he said calmly, though I knew that he was far from calm. Not a chance in hell. My body was pushed up against the wall in the next second. Ashton's hand was around my throat. Now Ashton growled. I could tell his wolf was about to explode from my lack of respect. She's in the fucking hospital. And you know who put her there. You, I shouted in his face. Ashton's angry expression vanished. Mine, however, did not. Is she okay? He asked quietly. I don't know, Ashton. Why don't you ask that bitch that you decided to fuck last night? I wasn't falling for his shit today. He didn't give a damn about her. His actions proved that. Ashton's hand fell from my throat and I fell to my feet. I shoved him away from me. He didn't even retaliate to my shove. He walked backwards until the back of his knees hit the bed and sat down. He put his head in his hands and seemed to be taking a couple of deep breaths. "Is she okay?" he repeated. I growled at his question. "I don't goddamn know Ashton." She was unconscious when the ambulance showed up and she didn't seem to be awake when they got to the hospital. When Ashton didn't respond immediately, I turned around to exit his room. "Where are you going?" Ashton called out when I reached the doorway. I turned my head around so I could look at him. He actually looked genuinely worried. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban. Carte thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. I'm going to go see if my friend is okay." "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm." Putting emphasis on friend, I didn't bother staying around to see what Ashton was going to do next. I walked out of his room and went downstairs. All commotion had stopped and it seemed as if everyone was frozen. They must have heard Ashton and I's conversation. I walked past them and picked up a shirt from one of the women's baskets. I threw it on as I continued walking toward the garage. I grabbed the keys to my car, hopped in, and speedily drove to the hospital. "Please be okay, Evie,"